AM 1460, the new WXBR. Thank you for joining us back on this Monday morning, PM in the AM, back with you here on the new WXBR. Joining us on the program this morning is Jimmy Korderas. He is the author of The 3 Count, My Life in Stripes as a WWE Referee. Jimmy has worked for the largest pro wrestling company in the world for over 2 decades. He has been right there for many of the WWE's biggest stories over the years, inside and outside the ring, including the Vince McMahon steroid scandal, the Montreal Screwjob, the death of Owen Hart, and the Chris Benoit saga, plus more. Jimmy, thank you very much for joining us on the program this morning. In the past, we've seen a plethora of wrestling-related books, mostly written by the wrestlers themselves. What led you to write this book and tell your story as a referee in WWE?
Well, to be perfectly first of all, thank you for having me on. And to be perfectly honest, at first I didn't think about writing a book. It was something that my wife and a friend of mine up here in Canada, Art O'Cal, suggested that I do. And at first I thought to myself, well, people don't want to read about somebody who had a good experience there. They want to read about, the inside stuff and what goes on behind the scenes, but in a almost like a scandalous way. And I thought maybe people don't want to read just some good, lighthearted stories and so forth. But they convinced me to do it, and we pitched the idea to people at ECW Press, and they were all for it. And I guess the rest is history. The book is a reality now.
How are you getting responses from the book so far?
For the most part, it's been pretty positive. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to get some good response from people in the industry, like Jim Ross and of course Bob Hawley has a book out as well. And we both have the same publisher, and we've read each other's books. And Bob's a good guy. I like Bob's book as well. So from within the industry, at least, I've been getting some pretty good feedback. I mean, obviously, not everybody's going to like the book. I didn't expect that, but so far so good.
I had a hard time, Jimmy, to be honest with you, finding anybody that had anything bad to say about you. And I think that's a good thing.
Well, thanks. I mean, I don't know. I always tried to have a positive attitude. I'm one of those people who, for the most part, tries to look at the glass half full, and try to go from there. And for someone like myself who got to live out a dream working for the WWE. Started when it was WWF. Doing something you love doesn't feel like work if you really, really enjoy what you're doing sometimes.
So let's go back before you got into wrestling. Growing up in Canada, must have been a huge wrestling fan. How do you go from just being a fan to, at that time, being brought in behind the scenes?
For me, basically it was right place, right time scenario. I mean, I used to go to all the shows here in Maple Leaf Gardens. At the time, just before I managed to get on with Jack Tunney here in Canada, the WWF used to run every 3 weeks at Maple Leaf Gardens, which up here in Canada is like the mecca of professional wrestling. It was the place to be. I guess you can compare it to like Madison Square Garden or Boston Garden or some of the old classic buildings.
Right.
And I used to go all the time, and I would take pictures, and I'd come back to the next show, and I'd sell them, and you always have in the back of your mind, I wish I could, be a part of this somehow. And then someone who worked for Jack Tunney caught me selling the pictures, and instead of basically turning me in because, technically what I was doing was somewhat what I found out to be illegal, selling copyrighted pictures. I mean, for me, it was just about making money to fuel my wrestling habit, And instead of turning me in, we became friends, and he introduced me to Jack, and just like a fortunate set of circumstances, really.
Now, for our listeners who don't know, Jack Tunney was an on-screen character, the on-screen president for WWF at the time, and he was actually an official for Canada. Is that correct?
Yeah, he was basically the lead promoter here in Canada. He took over the family business, I guess, from his uncle Frank, and when WWE moved in, they bought up the territory like they did many others, and Jack came aboard as the figurehead president.
That's very cool. So instead of actually getting in trouble, you got your dream, so to speak.
Yeah, I guess I don't want to encourage people to do, something that seemed to be not quite on the up and up, but you know what I mean? Again, it was just a fortunate set of circumstances that led to me getting in here and getting into the WWE, and I'm blessed, very lucky.
Former WWE champion Edge was kind enough to write the foreword to the 3 Count, My Life in Stripes as a WWE referee. Why was Edge chosen?
A couple of reasons. One, we were friends. We right from the beginning, from when he had his I guess you would call it a tryout match here in Hamilton, Ontario, when he got called in to fill in for someone, and it kind of became a tryout match. We just got along. He has a quirky sense of humor, and I've got an odd sense of humor myself. As he'll tell you, I'm always good for a bad joke here and there. And we just got along. I mean, we were good friends, and I was fortunate enough to be a part of many of his, big matches in the WWE. And I thought to myself, I wanted somebody to be not only a friend, but being from Canada, I thought it would be special to have a Canadian. And when I asked him, he was more than happy to do it, which I feel very grateful for.
It must have been nice to have Edge personally request you to be a part of his main event match at WrestleMania 24 against The Undertaker for the heavyweight title, which is also the cover of your book.
Yeah, I figured, the highlight of my career, I guess you'd have to say, it's WrestleMania. Everybody wants to be in a main event at WrestleMania, whether it is as a wrestler or from a referee's perspective, you want to referee a main event at WrestleMania, and I was very fortunate that Edge basically requested me for that match, which was very, very, very humbling and at the same time very proud moment. For him and The Undertaker to both want me to be the guy in there, because it makes you feel like they have the confidence in you, and that's really for me all I could ask for. But to have that picture on the book cover, I think was a no-brainer for me, because what a highlight! It doesn't get any bigger than that.
You're right. We're chatting with Jimmy Korderas, author of The 3 Count, My Life in Stripes as a WWE referee. You mentioned the referee and what it takes to be a referee. It's been said that the best referee is one that you don't notice. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's misconstrued. Basically, when I say stuff like that, it's the role of a referee is to help enhance the match without being a distraction
right.
At the same time. The referee shouldn't really be noticed as a focal point unless, for some reason, for match purposes, he is inserted in a certain spot or something like that. But other than that, especially the way wrestling has evolved today, I always encourage young guys to watch not only some of the best referees out there right now in wrestling. I also tell them to watch guys like Big John McCarthy and Herb Dean from MMA. Because when you watch them and just the way they move around the ring, you can see that they're always paying attention to what's going on. They're always doing their job, but at the same time, they're not a focal point. They're not a distraction, and their movements are very slow and fluid, and they pick up the pace when they need to pick up the pace. And it's kind of like mixing some MMA refereeing with professional wrestling to kind of it's almost like a hybrid now.
A lot of people don't actually realize the amount of work that goes into being a referee for WWE. You guys not only work more than once a night by being the third man in the ring and basically being a messenger between the two wrestlers, but you also set up and break down the ring and log on just as many hours on the road as the wrestlers themselves. Could you walk us through a typical Monday in the life of a referee for WWE?
Well, if you're on Monday Night Raw, basically, not all the referees are on the ring crew. I mean, some of the more tenured referees don't do the ring crew. It's kind of like a graduation process. I did it for the most of my time while I was in the WWE. And basically, on a Monday night, especially during TV, you would get to the arena about between 10 and 11 a.m., depending on the lighting rig, because that has to go up and be hung first, above the arena floor before you can start assembling the ring. Then it's a process of getting everything together. It's the ring itself. It's the wall, the protective barricade that goes around it as well. The mats. You set all that up and get it ready to go. Hopefully by 1 at the latest 2 o'clock, so guys can get in the ring and work out and that sort of stuff. And then it's basically waiting to get your match assignments and then getting all squared with that. And you do the show. Then afterwards you break it all down and in today's world, all the ring travels in an 18-wheeler where before we used to have to drive the ring around. Now we don't. It's all done for us, but we still have to drive to the next town, and that's pretty much a typical Monday.
Being around the company for so long, you were around during several dark periods for the company, like Vince's run-in with the law, the tragic death of Eddie Guerrero, and the Chris Benoit incident. You were also, unfortunately, the man in the ring when Owen Hart fell to his death. Without giving too much away, can you tell us how much that particular event affected you and the company at that time?
It affected me pretty much like everybody else. I mean, obviously a little differently because I was in the ring and very close to, becoming a more tragic part of that story than people actually realize. But it's hard. I mean, that old cliche that everybody's, you're a family on the road because you travel together and you're with everybody in that locker room more than you are with your own family. And, that was never more true than on that day because everybody to a man was heartbroken that something like that would happen, tragic accident like that. And it just puts everything into perspective. Sometimes, you do so much for the business and you try, try to do your best, but it really puts, friendship and life into perspective. And there's some things more important than the business.
Right, and I've always been a proponent of the show must go on. What were your thoughts of continuing the program after it was known that Owen had passed? I was kind of on the fence with that because, I understand why it was done, and I know that it's one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't situations because if you don't continue, then there's going to be a whole bunch of upset people, and if you do continue the show, there's going to be a whole bunch of upset people. So, I know this sounds like I'm taking the easy way out, but there's no right answer for that because, it's easy for us to sit back and say afterwards, well, the show should have stopped, or maybe they did do the right thing by continuing. I kind of liken it a little bit to kind of like a NASCAR race where the race continues even after tragic accidents, and it's a tough call. I'm just glad that I'm not the one that has to make that call. Exactly. We're chatting with Jimmy Korderas, author of The 3 Count, My Life in Stripes as a WWE referee. Besides the dark times in the company, there are many bright spots as well, like you mentioned before, being in the main event of WrestleMania, and a little thing we like to call Tribute to the Troops. What were those shows like?
Those were amazing. I mean, if there's one thing that I don't want to say maybe surpassed the WrestleMania moment, but probably on a par with the WrestleMania moment was going to Iraq twice to do the tribute for the troops. There's so much that goes into it, and it is a rough trip for all the talent and everybody, but at the same time, it is the most rewarding thing probably that I had done in my time at the WWE to go over there and just see all the troops and how happy they were that not only that we came to visit them, but to put on a show, and we stayed for a couple of days, which they really, really appreciated, and I can't describe what that felt like. I mean, just to give you an example, Tony Chimmel and I, ring announcer Tony Chimmel, would always talk about how we were standing outside of one of Saddam Hussein's palaces drinking a Corona and having a cigar. I mean, being guarded by U.S. troops. You know what I mean? It's so weird, but so cool at the same time.
It sounds surreal almost.
Yeah, exactly. And believe it or not, out in the distance, you can kind of hear a little, where the mortar fire coming in because we were at Camp Victory Base the first year we went, and you could kind of hear the mortar coming over, and they kept reassuring us, no, that's too far away, don't worry about it.
Wow, I can't imagine. There are there any funny road stories that you could entertain our listeners with?
Oh, I don't know. Where do I begin? Just some of the crazy things that we. Oh man, you put me on the spot here because it's like that old story. As soon as I hang up the phone, it'll be, oh, I got a million of them, and now I'm trying to think of one. But I remember one time getting lost. I was in a big van with a bunch of superstars like Bret Hart, Jim Neidhart, Hercules Hernandez was in the van, Sika the Samoan, and it was the middle of winter, and I was driving, and I got kind of lost because we were coming in from Michigan into Canada, and I kind of took a wrong little turn and ended up taking a little extra time crossing at the wrong border crossing, and it's bad enough. It's bad enough getting some of those guys upset with you, but you don't want a 300-pound angry Samoan mad at you. So all of a sudden, this empty pop can comes flying from the back of the van into the front. Says, "Are you ever going to figure out which way we're going?" Kind of scared the living crap out of me, but I ended up finding out where we were. This was the time before GPS, too. Thank God for GPS now.
Jimmy, we mind playing some word association with us? I'll give you some names, and you give me the first name the first word that comes to your mind.
Sure.
All right, let's start with Jack Tunney.
Gentleman. He was always a gentleman to me.
Ric Flair.
Top 3 ever.
Bret Hart.
Wow, that's a tough one. I'll go with the best there is, best there was, best there ever will be.
Very
from
good.
Canada.
Very good.
From Canada, I'll add that in just so that people don't get upset.
Of course. How about The Undertaker?
The best ever. The guy's most respect.
Pat Patterson.
Many thanks. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have had a career as a referee in the WWE.
Earl Hebner.
One of the best refs ever.
And we'll end with the big man himself, Mr. Vince McMahon.
Genius.
Very
Bottom
good.
line. I mean, how can you argue the success? Every time people have written Vince McMahon and the WWE off, he comes back stronger than ever. So, he's doing something right.
We're chatting with Jimmy Korderas, author of the 3 Count, My Life in Stripes as a WWE Referee. Jimmy, what are you doing with your time now that you're away from the business and you have more time at home? Do you miss the product and do you still watch it?
Oh, I watch it all the time. Up here in Canada, the Score Television Network is basically the home for WWE programming up here. They air everything from Raw, SmackDown, NXT. They even air NXT up here, Vintage Collection. And basically what I do is we do a post-Raw, almost like a post-game show on the television network. And it's on every Tuesday night. They do a Raw replay on Tuesdays, and we do that, and we break down the show. We talk about what we liked, what we didn't, and that sort of stuff. And we had a podcast going for a while. It's called Aftermath. We had a podcast going for a while, but due to some mergers and acquisitions up here as far as the station goes, that's on hiatus, but we're hoping to come back with that soon. So basically I guess you'd call me a wrestling analyst, if there is such a thing.
The book, The 3 Count, My Life in Stripes as a WWE Referee, is available everywhere. Of course, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble. Jimmy Korderas, thank you very much for joining us this morning. I would love to have you back on a little bit later on in the program, just to discuss wrestling in general.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Anytime.
Thank you very much. Mike Paiva, Peter Zimbor, PM in the AM. We'll be back right after this. Stay tuned.